Next we'll have Tuukka Ruotsalo, who's going to talk about brain-computer interfaces.
All right, can you hear me well? Perfect. I'm going to talk to you about a new type of brain-computer interfacing that we've been researching in my group at the Department of Computer Science. And in particular, the idea is to combine an AI models with feedback signals coming from the brain in generative settings. So if you look at the classic brain-computer interfacing setup, we're typically using lightweight sensors such as FNIRS, which measures the blood oxygenation, a bit like fMRI, but something that you can actually wear, or EEG, which is used in most of the examples that I'll be giving you. And the target is then to control some sort of a computer program. For example, in the first example, people are trying to type letters by attending to a certain letter, and when this is repeated, flashed on the screen, then from the brain signals we can build a classifier that actually then enters that particular letter on the screen, and this is how you can type. Or control a motor robotic arm, for example. So this is opposed to let's say, neuroscience research, where you're particularly interested in localizing and understanding where things happen in the brain, but here we're just using feedback signals from the brain to control a computer. So how these classical BCIs work is that you typically do a particular task that you train the computer to detect. For example, what Lauri was doing is you attend to something, or another typical task that you do is a motor imagery. So you're imagining to move your left or right arm, and then the computer is trained to detect that. So there's some artificial task that you actually do in your mind, but not physically, and then, for example, motor imagery can be then detected from the responses occurring in the motor cortex. And then in the actual usage phase, when the model has been trained, you do this imagery, the computer classifies the signal, and then is able to control, for example, in this case, the movement of the ball on the screen, or the cursor on the screen. So what we want to do is to change this paradigm so that the user who's using the BCI system doesn't have to actively participate. They are just reacting, just like we do in the real world. We see a nice picture, for example, we react to it. We don't have to do any specific artificial activity like thinking about moving arms or attending to something artificially. We want to capture natural reactions. And this implies that we can let go of the explicit command patterns that we have to pre-specify for the applications that you saw. So we don't have to attend to some particular command that we want to transfer to the machine, but just to react naturally on what we perceive. And this also relies that we can use stimulus spaces that are not controlled. So there are no activities like ball going left or right, or choosing from a letter from an alphabet, but we can use any stimuli that we want, more natural stimuli that is available, for example, in the digital world, any image, for example, in the internet. We can record reactions to that and then use this in a model. So how does this actually transfer to a model then? So we use generative models. In this case, we use a generative adversarial neural network that's learned a distribution of faces. You might have seen this work elsewhere. But we've trained the model so that it actually captures what a face can look like. And it doesn't only capture, but it can also generate new samples from this space. So these faces that you see morphing here, they are not real, but they are generated from a model. The computer is sort of imagining what the face can look like, and it can generate a continuous distribution of faces. And now we can actually record responses from the brain in response to seeing some of these faces, and adjust the model so that we can learn a continuous position in this space. So it's not just that you see some stimuli and we're going to classify them, but we're actually moving from brain feedback in a continuous space. And at any position in this continuous space, we can generate an output. So I'll show you an example how this works in an attractiveness task. So now the task of a user, now using the brain-computer interface here, is to just look at the pictures, nothing else. And we're picking up the natural reaction of what the user finds attractive. This is then transferred to a model that can actually generate then a new, previously completely unseen image of a face that didn't exist before, but is actually a result of this generative model. So the user just sees a bunch of images. We're not asking them to do anything. We're not asking them to attend or do any imaginary actions. They just look what's on the screen. And then the model picks up natural reactions towards these, and we can now then predict. So this is time flying from the first stimuli that they saw towards the end of the task. So the machine can now adjust its position in this learned space of faces. And slowly you can see it converging on a face that is then matching the preferences of the particular user. There's another one where the gender preference is male. So now you can see it starts from a woman and then slowly starts to converge to a man while the new face stimuli are adjusted in the adversarial learned space. And now in the end you see it's converged because very little changes are coming in. What's also remarkable here is that we can actually get a really nice performance for this. So when we control this against random and negatively generated images with the gender preference considered, we get almost a perfect performance for actually generating new information in response to the feedback inferred from the brain. Here's another example, a bit older work. So the task here is to read text, and we wanted to build a search engine that uses only your brain signals to then build a generative model to match a document that you're after. So this is trained with the entire English Wikipedia. And again, the task of the user is just to read. We're not asking them to do anything artificial. They're just reading. And we're picking up words, which are then modeled in this latent space. We're able to then generate a representation of what the user is interested in, and then use a model of the entire Wikipedia to rank and find documents that match the topics of what the users were interested in. So again, it's purely natural reactions. We're not asking them to do anything, and we're modeling both the data space, so basically the information, faces, and here documents, and the brain feedback is just directing a position in this space. This also works quite nicely. So with the sorry about the colors on the screen, but on the brain feedback you can see on the blue scale it actually clearly outperforms a random control. So we're actually able to find documents just from the natural reading behavior of the participants that match their interests. All right, and why this works is that because we're actually seeing natural stimuli and natural reactions to these stimuli, we're able to measure something called information gain. So we're associating the gain in the actual natural stimuli to the brain responses that the users have. So this is actually a new paper that under review now. But in both cases, for example, for the language, if we measure the information gain contained in individual words, we can find a difference when people perceive a word that is important for them versus a word that is not important, and on a scale how important it is. Similar to the faces, we can actually see that how much they prefer a face is directly visible in the event-related potential responses. And of course, to be able to make this work, we have to be able to decode these responses using machine learning. So we do this in a single trial scenario in a brain-computer interfacing setting, so you just see one word or one face at a time, and we're able to decide whether and how relevant or pleasant or attractiveness in the face case this particular stimuli is. All right, so we're presenting new types of brain-computer interfaces. We're using purely natural reactions, purely natural stimuli. In natural settings, we're able to decode the information gain in response to users just performing as they would without the device setup on. And we're using generative model control then not only to decide or classify whether some things are interesting or non-interesting or attractive or non-attractive, but we're actually able to generate new information that matches to the model that we have learned in this interaction. Thank you. I think I have time for a couple of questions.
Plenty of time. Thank you, Tuukka. Does anybody have a question for Tuukka? Again, Patrick. If you can get the mic down to Patrick. I have one, but you go ahead. You wait for the mic.
Maybe you'll wait for the mic.
Hello. Yeah, I was wondering, I was in the toilet when you started your talk, so I'm sorry I didn't hear the whole thing, but the pictures you showed that converged on like a female or male face, so was this from one participant?
Oh, the video, more
Yeah, the video.
Videos. Yeah, each is from one participant, yes.
Okay, yeah. And you had, what kind of participants did you have in the study?
In this experiment, I think we had a participant pool of 30 participants.
So you had females and males and...
We have females and males, and it's a gender-balanced experiment, yes.
Yeah.
Or gender preference balanced, actually.
So you asked the gender preference,
yes.
And then based on that,
yes.
You put them into... Okay, so I was wondering, did you have lesbians and gays also in this? And
I believe so, yes.
And
yes.
It worked as well with... Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Were the faces they converged on very similar?
Not very similar. So it's not. There's an effect in GANs called mode collapse, which means that you're actually always finding almost the same area, but not in this case. So there's actually quite a bit of variance. I'm not sure if I can. Of course, this is so. Here you can see there is quite a bit of variance. This is a random sample of 16, but. Of course, the model is trained with celebrity faces. This is a typical data set that we use in machine learning. So they are, in that sense, they are a bit similar looking. So we don't have a real distribution of natural
If you would
faces.
have taken consecutive pictures from the video you had and showed them to the participants, do you think you would have had a linear response in attractiveness? That is getting more and more attractive.
Yeah, we didn't try that. We've tried that in another experiment that I don't have data here for, but that's basically a categorical response experiment. So you're given an instruction to generate, let's say, a blonde-haired person,
okay.
and then we can actually see that it's sort of linear improvement. Yeah.
So it ends up with someone who looks like Emily in Paterma and Emily. Someone who's really blonde, going through like dirty brunettes.
We can talk more offline. But the instructions were, but they were categorical instructions. So the goal of the user was categorical.
Right. Any more questions? We'll go ahead to the next speaker. So thank you, Tuukka. Oh, sorry. I didn't see. I was looking over here. Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
Oh, thank you. Can I ask about the reading part? It was quite fast, so I didn't get what was the importance kind of measure in the stimulus. So what was the
the gain.
Yeah, kind of the same thing as the attractiveness.
What we compute is, so you take the entire this is computed from Wikipedia collection, then you compute something called information gain, which is an entropy-derived measure. So basically, what it quantifies for is that how much it discriminates from other documents. Right. So how much information an individual word in a particular document gives value to detect that document.
To the context.
Yes, so
it makes sense because it looks like the
it's in
enformative
context
type.
because you're actually reading the document in context and
Right.
you're trying to find out what the document is about.
Yeah, so it's like the surprising value, actually.
Well, it's not
That is-
actually the surprisal value as such, because that's a sequential value that you record within the sentence. So you're taking previously read information into account. Here, the context is not previously read, but it's the entire document.
Right, I'm asking because the response that you show, it looks like N400, which is kind of reflecting the mismatch between the context
yes,
and
but in fact, if you look at the ERPs, then you find effects in different components. So for
Right.
some words, you find it P300, for some you
Right.
find N4, for some you find P6.
And it's all used.
It's all used, and the classifier is able then to pick it up depending on the
Right.
particular word that you're looking at.
Yeah, nice, thank you.
Great, thanks, Tuukka.